Right. So, good morning, guys. Welcome to day 29 of Workout Grind. I hope you guys are doing well. I am currently still very sleepy, but thanks to this, I'm a bit awake now. This is from yesterday. I haven't finished it because it's like 2 tablets, and I'm kind of scared drinking it all the way is gonna like overdose me or something. It most likely won't, but you know, um, today's a good day. Today's a good day. I'm just gonna start working out now because it's already 6:56. Just did some Genshin for a little bit, so I don't have to play in the morning. The rest of the day. We need to log in back just to finish the commission quest. I mean the commission rewards and no exploration rewards, and then spend up my resins. But other than that, we're pretty chill. We're pretty Gucci. So I'm gonna start now. My plan today is there are 3 major things that I need to do today. So, first major thing is actually program. Second thing is I have to contact the CEO of the thing in LinkedIn. And the third thing is I am also going to fix my guitar somehow. Those 3 things. Okay. I'm allotting minimum 3 hours for programming, and I'm gonna put the guitar first because it's a little bit of my comfort zone. And then, if I have time, I'll actually contact the CEO of the company that I wanted to start. So, all those 3 today, and that's the plan. Right, anyways, wish me luck. Let's see what happens, okay? Okay. Now we're gonna work out. We're gonna work out. I'm still not able to use my watch. I'm still not able to use my watch because uh the charger port of my laptop is like broken, so I can't charge it. Uh I'm trying to figure out why that keeps on happening. It happened last time as well. I can't charge on that specific port, and it just happens randomly. Like this one, I didn't really do anything that I can remember that could trigger it or something. It just happened. So yeah, I can't charge it. I usually wear my watch to work out because it shows me my heart rate and how much calories I already can like burned or something. I don't know. Which is unfortunate, but yeah. Also life update. I also got my visa last week. I forgot to announce that. That's a really good. That's a good announcement. Yeah, I was getting really nervous with my visa application last time. So me finally getting the news that I'm finally approved is a huge moment for me. Just a good thing. A good thing. Uh, what else? Term break, AliExpress. Jesus Christ, this guy's. Yeah. just emailing these assholes. Could you imagine an agent man? Their whole job is for them to process and update if my visa status is already good to go. Has still not updated that my visa is approved over a week ago. Jesus Christ. These guys are so incompetent, man. Oh yeah, actually 4 things. I'm actually going to file my TFN and ABN. All those stuff because it's a need for me. So that actually goes up higher than my guitar. So 4 things. Jesus. Okay. Anyways, yeah, I can't use my guitar. I mean, my watch and my visa is approved now. Thank God. These incompetent assholes don't know how to update their clients. I don't know how they're the best in the business for Filipinos because they're, from what I can see, they're still pretty shit. Honestly. Anyways, yeah, that's it. Yeah, let's grind, guys. It's pretty much all my update. Yesterday I didn't really do anything. We cooked a lot, and I was downstairs most of the time. I didn't even get to go back to my room up until like what 9 or something, 9:20. Kind of fucked up, but yeah, that's all. I'm gonna mute. Okay. What else? There's really nothing much other than that. I'm gonna try to change that. I'm gonna really go down to like it's already September 4, and I need to do some back end grinding. I still haven't learned anything about Mern. Just know React. Know a little bit of Node. I've already been using Node for quite some time already, but I haven't really gone into depth about it, Pretty sure this is Node already. NPM's it's a Node package manager, bro. So yeah, man, it's like I think I'm pretty sure. Node version. Yeah, but like I said, I haven't really been using Node as a software. Like I haven't really understand it, so I'm gonna try to check that off. I haven't used the database of what's MySQL. No. Express. I haven't really used Express because right now I've been fucking around with servers, and JSON as a server using like sort of API or something, whatever, just to like mimic the effects of APIs, which I'll be using a lot of the time apparently in the future. MongoDB. No, that's not. MacBook. What is that? Man, MongoDB is. Then what the hell is Express? Angular? I don't know. What is Express? A framework. Maintain servers. Okay. See, like I said, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So yeah, we'll be changing that in soon. So after we do that, we can actually create a project, a project. It's a thing. We don't really have to think about it. Let's just create the goddamn project. Yeah? Doesn't care if it's profitable or not, doesn't care if it's a time waste, just do it because it's a practice thing. I think that's a good idea. Anyways, let's go. Let's get to grinding, guys. Let's listen to fucking TED Ed. It's apparently that is productive. Right, I think you can hear. I think you can still hear it. I don't know. I'm not sure. Hmm. This one. I want that one. Yeah, you can hear it.
What would you do with the largest laser in the world? Send a beam into space. Strap the laser to the head of a shark. Or maybe just use it to amuse your cat.
Actually, you know what? I think they have a playlist. Intersection. They do. Good. Ate. Ate, gitawag na kate. Ate. I'm just looking for things that I'm actually interested in, you know? Stream weather, nature, beauty, love, clues, is that Elon Musk? Alright. I like this one. Let me just check what the... Yeah, these are very old TED Talks, but
In the middle of my PhD, I was hopelessly stuck. Every research direction that I tried led to a dead end. It seemed like my basic assumptions just stopped working. I felt like a pilot flying through the mist, and I lost all sense of direction. I stopped shaving. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I felt unworthy of stepping across the gates of the university because I wasn't like Einstein or Newton or any other scientist whose results I had learned about, because in science we just learn about the results, not the process. And so obviously I couldn't be a scientist. But I had enough support, and I made it through and discovered something new about nature. This is an amazing feeling of calmness, being the only person in the world who knows a new law of nature. And I started the second project in my PhD. And it happened again. I got stuck, and I made it through. And I started thinking, maybe there's a pattern here. I asked the other graduate students, and they said, yeah, that's exactly what happened to us, except nobody told us about it. We'd all studied science as if it's a series of logical steps between question and answer. But doing research is nothing like that. At the same time, I was also studying to be an improvisation theater actor. So physics by day, and by night, laughing, jumping, singing, playing my guitar. Improvisation theater, just like science, goes into the unknown. Because you have to make a scene on stage without a director, without a script, without having any idea what you'll portray or what the other characters will do. But unlike science, in improvisation theater, they tell you from day one what's going to happen to you when you get on stage. You're going to fail miserably. You're going to get stuck. And we would practice staying creative inside that stuck place. For example, we had an exercise where we all stood in a circle, and each person had to do the world's worst tap dance. And everybody else applauded and cheered you on, supporting you on stage. When I became a professor and had to guide my own students through their research projects, I realized again, I don't know what to do. I'd studied thousands of hours of physics, biology, chemistry, but not 1 hour, not one concept on how to mentor, how to guide someone to go together into the unknown, about motivation. So I turned to improvisation theater, and I told my students from day one what's going to happen when you start research. And this has to do with our mental schema of what research will be like. Because you see, whenever people do anything, for example, if I want to touch this blackboard, my brain first builds up a schema, a prediction of exactly what my muscles will do before I even start moving my hand. And if I get blocked, if my schema doesn't match reality, that causes extra stress called cognitive dissonance. That's why your schemas had better match reality. But if you believe the way science is taught, and if you believe textbooks, you're liable to have the following schema of research. If A is the question, and B is the answer, then research is a direct path. The problem is that if an experiment doesn't work or a student gets depressed, it's perceived as something utterly wrong and causes tremendous stress. And that's why I teach my students a more realistic schema. Here's an example where things don't match your schema.
I don't get it. I can't see.
You know, So I teach my students a different schema.
Hello.
If A is the question, B is the answer. Stay creative in the cloud, and you start going,
Okay, I'm
and
gonna look.
experiments don't work. Experiments don't work. Experiments don't work. Experiments don't work until you reach a place linked with negative emotions, where it seems like your basic assumptions have stopped making sense, like somebody yanked the carpet beneath your feet. And I call this place the cloud. Now, you can be lost in the cloud for a day, a week, a month, a year, a whole career. But sometimes, if you're lucky enough and you have enough support, you can see in the materials at hand, or perhaps meditating on the shape of the cloud, a new answer. See, and you decide to go for it. And experiments don't work, but you get there. And then you tell everyone about it by publishing a paper that reads A arrow C, which is a great way to communicate, but as long as you don't forget the path that brought you there. Now, this cloud is an inherent part of research, inherent part of our craft, because the cloud stands guard at the boundary. It stands guard at the boundary between the known and the unknown. Because in order to discover something truly new, at least one of your basic assumptions has to change. And that means that in science we do something quite heroic. Every day we try to bring ourselves to the boundary between the known and the unknown and face the cloud. Now notice that I put B in the land of the known, because we knew about it in the beginning. But C is always more interesting and more important than B. So B is essential in order to get going, but C is much more profound, and that's the amazing thing about research. Now, just knowing that word, the cloud, has been transformational in my research group. Because students come to me and say, Uri, I'm in the cloud. And I say, great, you must be feeling miserable. But I'm kind of happy, because we might be close to the boundary between the known and the unknown, and we stand a chance of discovering something truly new. Since the way our mind works, just knowing that the cloud, is normal, it's essential, and in fact beautiful, we can join the Cloud Appreciation Society, and that detoxifies the feeling that something is deeply wrong with me. And as a mentor, I know what to do, which is to step up my support for the student, because research in psychology shows that if you're feeling fear and despair, your mind narrows down to very safe and conservative ways of thinking. If you'd like to explore the risky paths needed to get out of the cloud, you need other emotions: solidarity, support, hope, that come with your connection from somebody else. So like in improvisation theater, in science, it's best to walk into the unknown together. So knowing about the cloud, also learn from improvisation theater a very effective way to have conversations inside the cloud. It's based on the central principle of improvisation theater. So here improvisation theater came to my help again. It's called saying yes and to the offers made by other actors. That means accepting the offers and building on them. Saying yes and. For example, if one actor says, here's a pool of water, and the other actor says, no, that's just a stage, the improvisation is over. It's dead, and everybody feels frustrated. Saying, that's called blocking. If you're not mindful of communications, scientific conversations can have a lot of blocking. Saying yes and sounds like this. Here's a pool of water. Yeah, let's jump in. Look, there's a whale. Let's grab it by its tail. It's pulling us to the moon. So saying yes and bypasses our inner critic. We all have an inner critic that kind of guards what we say, so people don't think that we're obscene or crazy or unoriginal. And science is full of fear of appearing unoriginal. Saying yes and bypasses the critic and unlocks hidden voices of creativity you didn't even know that you had, and they often carry the answer. about the cloud. So you see, knowing about the cloud and about saying yes and made my lab very creative. Students started playing off of each other's ideas, and we made surprising discoveries in the interface between physics and biology. For example, we were stuck for a year trying to understand the intricate biochemical networks inside our cells. And we said, we are deeply in the cloud. And we had a playful conversation where my student Shai Chanol said, well, let's just draw this on a piece of paper, this network. And instead of saying, but we've done that so many times and it doesn't work, I said, yes, and let's use a very big piece of paper. And then Ron Milo said, let's use a gigantic architect's blueprint kind of paper, and I know where to print it. And we printed out the network and looked at it, and that's where we made our most important discovery, that this complicated network is just made of a handful of simple repeating interaction patterns, like motifs in a stained glass window. We call them network motifs, and they're the elementary circuits that help us understand the logic of the way cells make decisions in all organisms, including our body. Soon enough after this, I started being invited to give talks to thousands of scientists across the world, but the knowledge about the cloud and saying yes and just stayed within my own lab. Because you see, in science, we don't talk about the process, anything subjective or emotional. We talk about the results. So there was no way to talk about it in conferences. That was unthinkable. And I saw scientists in other groups get stuck without even having a word to describe what they're seeing. And their ways of thinking narrowed down to very safe paths. Their science didn't reach its full potential, and they were miserable. I thought, that's the way it is. I'll try to make my lab as creative as possible, and if everybody else does the same, science will eventually become more and more better and better. That way of thinking got turned on its head when by chance I went to hear Evelyn Fox Keller give a talk about her experiences as a woman in science. And she asked, why is it that we don't talk about the subjective and emotional aspects of doing science? It's not by chance. It's a matter of values. You see, science seeks knowledge that's objective and rational. That's the beautiful thing about science. But we also have a cultural myth that the doing of science, what we do every day to get that knowledge, is also only objective and rational, as like Mr. Spock. And when you label something as objective and rational, automatically the other side, the subjective and emotional, become labeled as non-science or anti-science or threatening to science, and we just don't talk about it. And when I heard that science has a culture, everything clicked into place for me, because if science has a culture, culture can be changed. And I can be a change agent working to change the culture of science wherever I could. And so the very next lecture I gave in a conference, I talked about my science, and then I talked about the importance of the subjective and emotional aspects of doing science and how we should talk about them. And I looked at the audience, and they were cold. They couldn't hear what I was saying in the context of a 10 back-to-back PowerPoint presentation conference. And I tried again and again, conference after conference, but I wasn't getting through. I was in the cloud. And eventually, I managed to get out of the cloud using improvisation and music. Actually, since then, every conference I go to, I give a science talk and a second special talk called Love and Fear in the Lab. And I started off by doing a song about scientists' greatest fear, which is that we work hard, we discover something new, and somebody else publishes it before we do. We call it being scooped. And being scooped feels horrible. It makes us afraid to talk to each other, which is no fun because we came to science to share our ideas and to learn from each other. And so I do a blues song, which called Scooped Again. And I ask the audience to be my backup singers. And I tell them, your text is scoop, scoop. Sounds like this, scoop, scoop. Sounds like this. I've been scooped again, scoop, scoop. And then we go for it. I've been scooped again, scoop, scoop. I've been scooped again. I've been scooped again. I've been scooped again. Oh, Mama, can't you feel my pain? Heavens help me, I've been scooped again. Thank you. Thank you for your backup singing. So everybody starts laughing, starts breathing, notices that there's other scientists around them with shared issues, and we start talking about the emotional and subjective things that go on in research. It feels like a huge taboo has been lifted. Finally, we can talk about this in a scientific conference. And scientists have gone on to form peer groups where they meet regularly and create a space to talk about the emotional and subjective things that happen as they're mentoring, as they're going into the unknown, and even started courses about the process of doing science, about going into the unknown together, and many other things. So my vision is that just like every scientist knows the word atom, that matter is made out of atoms, every scientist would know the words like the cloud, saying yes and science will become much more creative, make many, many more unexpected discoveries for the benefit of us all, and will also be much more playful. And what I might ask you to remember from this talk is that next time you face a problem you can't solve in work or in life, there's a word for what you're going to see, the cloud. And you can go through the cloud not alone, but together with someone who's your source of support to say yes and to your ideas, to help you say yes and to your own ideas. To increase the chance, well, through the wisps of the cloud, you'll find that moment of calmness where you get your first glimpse of your unexpected discovery, your sea. Thank you.
What's next?
I feel so fortunate that my first job was working at the Museum of Modern Art on a retrospective of painter Elizabeth Murray. I learned so much from her. After the curator, Robert Storr, selected all the paintings from her lifetime body of work, I loved looking at the paintings from the 1970s. There were some motifs and elements that would come up again later in her life. I remember asking her what she thought of those early works. If you didn't know they were hers, you might not have been able to guess. She told me that a few didn't quite meet her own mark for what she wanted them to be. One of the works, in fact, so didn't meet her mark, she had set it out in the trash in her studio, and her neighbor had taken it because she saw its value. In that moment, my view of success and creativity changed. I realized that success is a moment, but what we're always celebrating is creativity and mastery. But this is the thing, what gets us to convert success into mastery? This is a question I've long asked myself. I think it comes when we start to value the gift of a near win. I started to understand this when I went on one cold May day to watch a set of varsity archers, all women as fate would have it, at the northern tip of Manhattan at Columbia's Baker Athletic Complex. I wanted to see what's called Archer's paradox, the idea that in order to actually hit your target, you have to aim at something slightly skew from it. I stood and watched as the coach drove up these women in this gray van, and they exited with this kind of relaxed focus. One held a half-eaten ice cream cone in one hand and arrows in the left with yellow fletching, and they passed me and smiled, but they sized me up as they made their way to the turf and spoke to each other not with words, but with numbers, degrees, I thought, positions for how they might plan to hit their target. I stood behind one archer as her coach stood in between us to maybe assess who might need support, and watched her, and I didn't understand how even one was going to hit the 10 ring. The 10 ring from the standard 75-yard distance, it looks as small as a matchstick tip held out at arm's length. And this is while holding 50 pounds of draw weight on each shot. She first hit a 7, I remember, and then a 9, and then 2 10s, and the next arrow didn't even hit the target. And I saw that gave her more tenacity, and she went after it again and again. For 3 hours, this went on. At the end of the practice, one of the archers was so taxed that she laid out on the ground just starfished, her head looking up at the sky, trying to find what T.S. Eliot might call that still point of the turning world. It's so rare in American culture, there's so little that's vocational about it anymore, to look at what doggedness looks like with this level of exactitude, what it means to align your body posture for 3 hours in order to hit a target, pursuing a kind of excellence in obscurity. But I stayed because I realized I was witnessing what's so rare to glimpse, that difference between success and mastery. So success is hitting that 10 ring, but mastery is knowing that it means nothing if you can't do it again and again. Mastery is not just the same as excellence, though. It's not the same as success, which I see as an event, a moment in time, and a label that the world confers upon you. Mastery is not a commitment to a goal, but to a constant pursuit. What gets us to do this, what gets us to forward thrust more, is to value the near win. How many times have we designated something a classic, a masterpiece even, while its creator considers it hopelessly unfinished, riddled with difficulties and flaws? In other words, a near win. Elizabeth Murray surprised me with her admission about her earlier paintings. Painter Paul Cézanne so often thought his works were incomplete that he would deliberately leave them aside with the intention of picking them back up again. But at the end of his life, the result was that he had only signed 10% of his paintings. His favorite novel was The Unfinished Masterpiece by Honoré Balzac, and he felt that the protagonist was the painter himself. Franz Kafka saw in completion what others would find only works to praise, so much so that he wanted all of his diaries, manuscripts, letters, and even sketches burned upon his death. His friend refused to honor the request, and because of that, we now have all the works we now do by Kafka. America, The Trial, and The Castle, a work so incomplete it even stops mid-sentence. The pursuit of mastery, in other words, is an ever onward almost. Lord, grant that I desire more than I can accomplish, Michelangelo implored, as if to that Old Testament God in the Sistine Chapel, and he himself was that Adam with his finger outstretched and not quite touching that God's hand. Mastery is in the reaching, not the arriving. It's in constantly wanting to close that gap between where you are and where you want to be. Mastery is about sacrificing for your craft and not for the sake of crafting your career. How many inventors and untold entrepreneurs live out this phenomenon? We see it even in the life of the indomitable Arctic explorer Ben Saunders, who tells me that his triumphs are not merely the result of a grand achievement, but of the propulsion of a lineage of near wins. We thrive when we stay at our own leading edge. It's a wisdom understood by Duke Ellington, who said that his favorite song out of his repertoire was always the next one, always the one he had yet to compose. Part of the reason that the near win is inbuilt to mastery is because the greater our proficiency, the more clearly we might see that we don't know all that we thought we did. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Paris Review got it out of James Baldwin when they asked him, "What do you think increases with knowledge?" And he said, "You learn how little you know." Success motivates us, but a near win can propel us in an ongoing quest. One of the most vivid examples of this comes when we look at the difference between Olympic silver medalist and bronze medalist after competition. Thomas Gilovich and his team from Cornell studied this difference and found that the frustration silver medalists feel, compared to bronze, who are typically a bit more happy to have just not received fourth place and not medaled at all, gives silver medalists a focus on follow-up competition. We see it even in the gambling industry that once picked up on this phenomenon of the near win and created these scratch-off tickets that had a higher than average rate of near wins, and so compelled people to buy more tickets that they were called heart stoppers and were set on a gambling industry set of abuses in Britain in the 1970s. The reason the near wind has a propulsion is because it changes our view of the landscape and puts our goals, which we tend to put at a distance, into more proximate vicinity to where we stand. If I ask you to envision what a great day looks like next week, you might describe it in more general terms. But if I ask you to describe a great day at TED tomorrow, you might describe it with granular, practical clarity. And this is what a near wind does. It gets us to focus on what, right now, we plan to do to address that mountain in our sights. It's Jackie Joyner-Kersee, who in 1984 missed taking the gold in the heptathlon by 1/3 of a second. And her husband predicted that would give her the tenacity she needed in follow-up competition. In 1988, she won the gold in the heptathlon and set a record of 7,291 points, a score that no athlete has come very close to since. We thrive not when we've done it all, but when we still have more to do. I stand here thinking and wondering about all the different ways that we might even manufacture a near win in this room, how your lives might play this out. Because I think on some gut level, we do know this. We know that we thrive when we stay at our own leading edge, and it's why the deliberate incomplete is inbuilt into creation myths. In Navajo culture, some craftsmen and women would deliberately put an imperfection in textiles and ceramics. It's what's called a spirit line, a deliberate flaw in the pattern to give the weaver or maker a way out, but also a reason to continue making work. Masters are not experts because they take a subject to its conceptual end. They're masters because they realize that there isn't one. Now, it occurred to me as I thought about this, why the archery coach told me at the end of that practice, out of earshot of his archers, that he and his colleagues never feel they can do enough for their team, never feel there are enough visualization techniques and posture drills to help them overcome those constant near wins. It didn't sound like a complaint exactly, but just a way to let me know, kind of tender admission, to remind me that he knew he was giving himself over to a voracious, unfinished path that always required more. We build out of the unfinished idea, even if that idea is our former self. This is the dynamic of mastery. Coming close to what you thought you wanted can help you attain more than you ever dreamed you could. It's what I have to imagine Elizabeth Murray was thinking when I saw her smiling at those early paintings one day in the galleries. Even if we created utopias, I believe we would still have the incomplete. Completion is a goal, but we hope it is never the end. Thank you.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class. Because I am the best teacher and you are the best students, they put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Why do so many people reach success and then fail? Well, one of the big reasons is we think success is a one-way street. So we do everything that leads up to success, but then we get there, we figure we made it, we sit back in our comfort zone, and we actually stop doing everything that made us successful. And it doesn't take long to go downhill. And I can tell you this happens because it happened to me. Reaching success, I worked hard, I pushed myself, but then I stopped because I figured, oh, you know, I've made it. I can just sit back and relax. Reaching success, I always tried to improve and do good work. But then I stopped because I figured, hey, I'm good enough. I don't need to improve anymore. Reaching success, I always was pretty good at coming up with good ideas because I did all these simple things that lead to ideas. But then I stopped because I figured I was this hotshot guy and I shouldn't have to work at ideas. They should just come like magic. And the only thing that came was creative block. I couldn't come up with any ideas. Reaching success, I always focused on clients and projects and ignored the money. But then all this money started pouring in, and I got distracted by it. And suddenly I was on the phone to my stockbroker and my real estate agent when I should have been talking to my clients. And reaching success, I always did what I loved. But then I got into stuff I didn't love, like management. I'm the world's worst manager, but I figured I should be doing it because I was, after all, the president of the company. Well, soon a black cloud formed over my head, and here I was, outwardly very successful, but inwardly very depressed. But I'm a guy. I knew how to fix it. I bought a fast car. It didn't help. I was faster, but just as depressed. So I went to my doctor. I said, Doc, I can buy anything I want, but I'm not happy. I'm depressed. It's true what they say, and I didn't believe it until it happened to me, but money can't buy happiness. He said, no, but it can buy Prozac. And he put me on antidepressants. And yeah, the black cloud faded a little bit, but so did all the work. Because I was just floating along. I couldn't care less if clients ever called. And clients didn't call. Because they could see I was no longer serving them, I was only serving myself. So they took their money and their projects to others who would serve them better. Well, didn't take long for business to drop like a rock. My partner and I, Tom, we had to let all our employees go. It was down to just the two of us, and we were about to go under. And that was great, because with no employees, there was nobody for me to manage. So I went back to doing the projects I loved. I had fun again, I worked harder, and to cut a long story short, did all the things that took me back up to success. But it wasn't a quick trip. It took 7 years. But in the end, business grew bigger than ever. And when I went back to following these 8 principles, the black cloud over my head disappeared altogether. And I woke up one day and I said, I don't need Prozac anymore. And I threw it away and haven't needed it since. I learned that success isn't a one-way street. It doesn't look like this. It really looks more like this. It's a continuous journey. And if we want to avoid success to failure syndrome, We just keep following these 8 principles because that's not only how we achieve success, it's how we sustain it. So here's to your continued success. Thank you very much.
Terrible talk. It's just kind of a humble brag.
So that's Johnny Depp, of course. And that's Johnny Depp's shoulder. And that's Johnny Depp's famous shoulder tattoo. Some of you might know that in 1990, Depp got engaged to Winona Ryder. And he had tattooed on his right shoulder, Winona Forever. And then 3 years later, which in fairness kind of is forever by Hollywood standards, they broke up. And Johnny went and got a little bit of repair work done. And now his shoulder says, Wino Forever. So like Johnny Depp, and like 25% of Americans between the ages of 16 and 50, I have a tattoo. I first started thinking about getting it in my mid-20s, but I deliberately waited a really long time. Because we all know people who've gotten tattoos when they were 17 or 19 or 23, and regretted it by the time they were 30. That didn't happen to me. I got my tattoo when I was 29, and I regretted it instantly. And by regretted it, I mean that I stepped outside of the tattoo place. This is just a couple miles from here, down on the Lower East Side. And I had a massive emotional meltdown in broad daylight on the corner of East Broadway and Canal Street. Which is a great place to do it because nobody cares. And then I went home that night and I had an even larger emotional meltdown, which I'll say more about in a minute.
No.
And this was all actually quite shocking to me because prior
App? Huh? Unta? Lap? Lab? Kira ka? Sleep paralysis ka? Okay na ka or coba? Okay ra ka, Lab? Lab? Okay na ka? Sleep paralysis ka? Kaluoy. Ay! Oo, man. Mata na mata. Tindog sa, tindog sa, tindog sa. Tindog sa, tindog sa.
Ah?
Tindog sa.
Oo. Hindi ko sa bukid ka kalawas. Ganyan. Sa inat eh.
Ano to? Nanawag ka na ako.
Alas na.
Ha?
Harap ko ka ando. Sulat sa ako ito.
Wala.
Ito.
Wala. Lisod sab.
Yung pala kong door ko kasi ito may sunod.
Okay. Nanawag ka na ako kung ako siya ang idool.
Kung ba nakipagkanalaw ko sa inyo tapos ganun. Last na siya, git na siya tapos dili na ako ka-istorya ko tapos
Kaluwi sa kong lablab.
wala siya kasunod. Umisok.
Kaluwi sa kong lablab. Ay.
Yung kaya akong pretend na itong manisunod kung ba ko.
Okay.
No, may bata naman to. Unsa naman to?
Bata na sab.
Hindi bata itong siya. Silver tail pa.
Okay.
Unsa ko na love?
Hindi ka na.
Piyang ako.
Ano?
Piyang.
Google la. Wait lang, sleep paralysis, di ba? Weird man kay na akong... May pag-screenshot na ako daan, no?
Okay na. Nakulaan check it out. Education. Hindi ako gusto ito kung ako matampi yung sabay mo. Legit, abin ako imagination ka na ako.
Ano ba?
Gimana ta? Ano to kasi paralysis? Arman.
Okay, mata na kay... Klase ra ba ka niya?
Online na. Ako po yan.
Mata na.
Thank you sa pagpapala na lahat.
No problem. Sige, balik sa ako sa workout na ba? Balik sa ako sa workout. Okay.
Yeah.
This moment, I had prided myself on having absolutely no regrets. Now, I made a lot of mistakes and dumb decisions, of course. I do that hourly. But I'd always felt like, look, you know, I mean, I made the best choice I could make given who I was then, given the information I had on hand. I learned a lesson from it. It somehow got me to where I am in life right now, and okay, I wouldn't change it. In other words, I had drunk our great cultural Kool-Aid about regret, which is that lamenting things that occurred in the past is an absolute waste of time, that we should always look forward and not backward, and that one of the noblest and best things we can do is strive to live a life free of regrets. This idea is nicely captured by this quote: "Things without all remedy should be without regard. What's done is done." Now, this seems like kind of an admirable philosophy at first, something we might all agree to sign on to, until I tell you who said it. Right, so this is Lady Macbeth basically telling her husband to stop being such a wuss for feeling bad about murdering people. And as it happens, Shakespeare was onto something here, as he generally was, because the inability to experience regret is actually one of the diagnostic characteristics of sociopaths. It's also, by the way, characteristic of certain kinds of brain damage. So people who have damage to their orbital cortex seem to be unable to feel regret in the face of even obviously very poor decisions. So if in fact you want to live a life free of regret, there is an option open to you. It's called lobotomy. But if you want to be fully functional and fully human and fully humane, I think you need to learn to live not without regret, but with it. So let's start out by defining some terms. What is regret? Regret is the emotion we experience when we think that our present situation could be better or happier if we had done something different in the past. So in other words, regret requires two things. It requires, first of all, agency. We had to make a decision in the first place. And second of all, it requires imagination. We need to be able to imagine going back and making a different choice. And then we need to be able to kind of spool this imaginary record forward and imagine how things would be playing out in our present. And in fact, the more we have of either of these things, the more agency and the more imagination with respect to a given regret, the more acute that regret will be. So let's say, for instance, that you're on your way to your best friend's wedding, and you're trying to get to the airport, and you're stuck in terrible traffic, and you finally arrive at your gate, and you've missed your flight. You're going to experience more regret in that situation if you missed your flight by 3 minutes than if you missed it by 20. Why? Well, because if you miss your flight by 3 minutes, it is painfully easy to imagine that you could have made different decisions that would have led to a better outcome. I should have taken the bridge and not the tunnel. I should have gone through that yellow light. These are the classic conditions that create regret. We feel regret when we think we are responsible for a decision that came out badly, but almost came out well. Now, within that framework, we can obviously experience regret about a lot of different things. This session today is about behavioral economics, and most of what we know about regret comes to us out of that domain. We have a vast body of literature on consumer and financial decisions and the regrets associated with them. Buyer's remorse, basically. But then finally, it occurred to some researchers to step back and say, well, okay, but overall, what do we regret most in life? Here's what the answers turn out to look like. So, top 6 regrets, the things we regret most in life. Number 1, by far, education. 33% of all of our regrets pertain to decisions we made about education. We wish we'd gotten more of it. We wish we'd taken better advantage of the education that we did have. We wish we'd chosen to study a different topic. Other very high on our list of regrets include career, romance, parenting, various decisions and choices about our sense of self, and how we spend our leisure time. Or actually, more specifically, how we fail to spend our leisure time. The remaining regrets pertain to these things: finance, family issues unrelated to romance or parenting, health, friends, spirituality, and community. So in other words, we know most of what we know about regret by the study of finance, but it turns out when you look overall at what people regret in life, you know what? Our financial decisions don't even rank. They account for less than 3% of our total regrets. So if you're sitting there stressing about large cap versus small cap, or company A versus company B, or should you buy the Subaru or the Prius, you know what? Let it go. Odds are you're not going to care in 5 years. But for these things that we actually do really care about and do experience profound regret around, what does that experience feel like? Well, we all know the short answer, right? It feels terrible. Regret feels awful. But it turns out that regret feels awful in 4 very specific and consistent ways. So the first consistent component of regret is basically denial. When I went home that night after getting my tattoo, I basically stayed up all night, and for the first several hours, there was exactly one thought in my head, and the thought was, make it go away. This is an unbelievably primitive emotional response. I mean, it's right up there with, I want my mommy. And we're not trying to solve the problem. We're not trying to understand how the problem came about. We just want it to vanish. The second characteristic component of regret is a sense of bewilderment. So the other thing I thought about there in my bedroom that night was, how could I have done that? What was I thinking? It's this real sense of alienation from the part of us that made a decision we regret. We can't identify with that part. We don't understand that part. And we certainly don't have any empathy for that part, which explains the third consistent component of regret, which is an intense desire to punish ourselves. That's why in the face of our regrets, the thing we consistently say is, I could have kicked myself. The fourth component here is that regret is what psychologists call perseverative. To perseverate means to focus obsessively and repeatedly on the exact same thing. Now, the effect of perseveration is to basically take these first 3 components of regret and put them on an infinite loop. So it's not that I sat there in my bedroom that night thinking, make it go away. It's that I sat there and I thought, make it go away, make it go away, make it go away, make it go away. So if you look at the psychological literature, these are the 4 consistent defining components of regret. But I want to suggest that there's also a 5th one. And I think of this as a kind of existential wake-up call. That night in my apartment, after I got done kicking myself and so forth, I lay in bed for a long time, and I thought about skin grafts. And then I thought about how much as travel insurance doesn't cover acts of God, probably my health insurance did not cover acts of idiocy. In point of fact, no insurance covers acts of idiocy. The whole point of acts of idiocy is that they leave you totally uninsured. They leave you exposed to the world and exposed to your own vulnerability and fallibility in face of, frankly, a fairly indifferent universe. This is obviously an incredibly painful experience. And I think it's particularly painful for us now in the West, in the grips of what I sometimes think of as a Control-Z culture. Control-Z like the computer command, undo. We're incredibly used to not having to face life's hard realities in a certain sense. We think we can throw money at the problem or throw technology at the problem. We can undo and unfriend and unfollow. And the problem is that there are certain things that happen in life that we desperately want to change, and we cannot. Sometimes instead of Control-Z, we actually have zero control. And for those of us who are control freaks and perfectionists, and I know whereof I speak, this is really hard because we want to do everything ourselves and we want to do it right. Now, there is a case to be made that control freaks and perfectionists should not get tattoos. And I'm going to return to that point in a few minutes. But first I want to say that the intensity and persistence with which we experience these emotional components of regret is obviously going to vary depending on the specific thing that we're feeling regretful about. So for instance, here's one of my favorite automatic generators of regret in modern life. Right, and the amazing thing about this really insidious technological innovation is that even just with this one thing, we can experience a huge range of regret. You know, you can accidentally hit reply all to an email and torpedo a relationship. Or you can just have an incredibly embarrassing day at work. Or you can have your last day at work. And this doesn't even touch on the really profound regrets of life. Because of course, sometimes we do make decisions that have irrevocable and terrible consequences, either for our own or for other people's health and happiness and livelihoods, and in the very worst case scenario, even their lives. Now, obviously, those kinds of regrets are incredibly piercing and enduring. I mean, even the stupid reply all regrets can leave us in a fit of excruciating agony for days. So how are we supposed to live with this? I want to suggest that there's 3 things that help us to make our peace with regret. And the first of these is to take some comfort in its universality. If you Google regret and tattoo, you will get 11.5 million hits. The FDA estimates that of all the Americans who have tattoos, 17% of us regret getting them. That is Johnny Depp and me and our 7 million friends. And that's just regret about tattoos. We are all in this together. The second way that we can help make our peace with regret is to laugh at ourselves. Now, in my case, this really wasn't a problem because it's actually very easy to laugh at yourself when you're 29 years old and you want your mommy because you don't like your new tattoo. But it might seem like a kind of cruel or glib suggestion when it comes to these more profound regrets. I don't think that's the case, though. All of us who've experienced regret that contains real pain and real grief understand that humor, and even black humor, plays a crucial role in helping us survive. It connects the poles of our lives back together, the positive and the negative, and it sends a little current of life back into us. The third way that I think we can help make our peace with regret is through the passage of time, which, as we know, heals all wounds, except for tattoos, which are permanent. So it's been several years since I got my own tattoo, and do you guys just want to see it? All right. Actually, you know what? I should warn you. You're going to be disappointed because it's actually not that hideous, right? I didn't tattoo, Marilyn Manson's face on some indiscreet part of myself or something. When other people see my tattoo, for the most part, they like how it looks. It's just that I don't like how it looks. And as I said earlier, I'm a perfectionist. But I'll let you see it anyway.
See it.
This is my tattoo. I can guess what some of you are thinking, so let me reassure you about something. Some of your own regrets are also not as ugly as you think they are. I got this tattoo because I spent most of my 20s living outside of the country and traveling. And when I came and settled in New York afterwards, I was worried that I would forget some of the most important lessons that I learned during that time. Specifically, the two things I learned about myself that I most didn't want to forget was how important it felt to keep exploring, and simultaneously how important it is to somehow keep an eye on your own true north. And what I loved about this image of the compass was that I felt like it encapsulated both of these ideas in one simple image. And I thought it might serve as a kind of permanent mnemonic device. Well, it did. But it turns out it doesn't remind me of the thing I thought it would. It reminds me constantly of something else instead. It actually reminds me of the most important lesson regret can teach us, which is also one of the most important lessons life teaches us. And ironically, I think it's probably the single most important thing I possibly could have tattooed onto my body, partly as a writer, but also just as a human being. Here's the thing. If we have goals and dreams, and we want to do our best, and if we love people and we don't want to hurt them or lose them, we should feel pain when things go wrong. The point isn't to live without any regrets. The point is to not hate ourselves for having them. The lesson that I ultimately learned from my tattoo and that I want to leave you with today is this. We need to learn to love the flawed, imperfect things that we create and to forgive ourselves for creating them. Regret doesn't remind us that we did badly. It reminds us that we know we can do better. Thank you.
It's the Second World War, a German prison camp, and this man, Archie Cochrane, is a prisoner of war and a doctor, and he has a problem.
Done for today.
The problem is that the men under his care are suffering from
Still a lot of
an excruciating and
cool
debilitating
things
condition.
has been happening. So I'm just a
that
bit
Archie doesn't really understand.
amused with myself, every time, because I have been streaming at the same time, working out at the same time, listening to a TED Talk, trying to develop mentally, spiritually. It's like, and sometimes also even do teeth whitening routines. So it's like I'm doing all these things at once. Makes me proud of myself a little bit. Just a little appreciation and things, It's nice. Yeah, I think my workout is done. I haven't really finished all of my workout sets. I have skipped pretty much half of the third set, and yeah, I have the third set, but I didn't skip in anything else except probably tricep kickback in the first set because I didn't see it. But yeah, so other than that, I pretty much rushed it, considering the fact that this is me going back after 2 weeks of inactivity because I'm too tired from going into the gym last 2 weeks as well. So it's good progress. And it's 8 a.m. I'm gonna have to like take a bath real quick, make things really nice, round things up, and I do not want to go to IG. And yeah, lots to learn today. Really good idea about how you should update your schema and how you perceive things. Like when you're doing something that is beyond normalcy, you're going to expect failures, you know, because it's a path of traversed by fear. It's unknown. So of course it's gonna be lots of trial and error, and it's not a sure, clear path that you're going to succeed, but it's a venture worth going for, you know. I like that. I like that lesson a lot, and I like the concept of not regretting your regrets, because the way I interpret it is like when you have regrets, it means things actually matter to you. Like it means something to you, you know. I get like some people are complaining about their relationship because they feel like it's too safe, like there's no argument, there's nothing that's been going on, and they wanna like argue with their partner, and they feel like, oh no, that's a bad thing. But if you think about it, the issue is not because there's no issue. The issue is because your other partner doesn't really care enough to see it as an issue. Like there's a difference between there's no problem and you're indifferent with the situation. Like you don't really care enough to make it as something that is worthwhile your argument. I think that's the main issue there. Like you're not really passionate to your partner or something. I think that's how I see it. So yeah, gives me new perspectives in life. It's a really good TED talk. So really amazing stuff. I also like the what's the other TED talk that I've listened to? I also like the that was from a previous TED talk that I've listened, but I like the idea of being an entrepreneur and its path of it's not really going to be a success thing. You should really look at entrepreneurship as something that you're gonna want to try, and you're gonna have to know that you're going to fail, but you're still gonna do it anyways. It's not a calculation of it's going to be a success most of the time. And I want to try. Yeah, so that's the thing. Good workout today. Anyways, yeah, again, 4 things I need to do. I'm probably gonna to put that in a note. First thing I need to do is to finish front end React tutorial programming. Next, I'm going to finish creating TFN and ABN. Then I'm going to fix my guitar. And finally, I'm going to talk to the CEO of Accelerator Lab for the Best Buy project. Alright. All 4 things. I'm guessing with my current mental capacity, I'm probably be going to at least finish 2. I'm gonna try my best for me to like finish at least 3, and I'll be really happy if I actually finished 4. So yeah, wish me luck, you guys. I'm gonna take a bath right now. See you guys later.